If you've spent any amount of time browsing YouTube or really any other mainstream social media site like X or Reddit, chances are you've seen an ad either by a content creator themselves or an advertisement banner on the site you're on showcasing some VPN that you absolutely must buy then and there in order to cash in on that beautiful 99.9% off for the first 3 months of your subscription offer and enter the promo code #420blazeit. All jokes aside, there are a lot of VPNs on the market right now. Some of the more notable ones being everyone's favourite NordVPN, or perhaps you would remember a more classic VPN like TunnelBear. What all of these VPNs have in common, other than their being, is the various subscription tiers they come with, as well as their willingness to cooperate with law enforcement. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, is a phrase we are constantly told by the powers that be. Is it true? Well, the short answer is no, absolutely not. Your average Joe may want to keep their private data, well, private, and in the pursuit of this goal, they may want to make use of a VPN service like those previously mentioned, or a free VPN service such as ProtonVPN. However, depending on the activities they are partaking in and the drive of the authorities who may or may not be taking a certain interest in them, as this will ultimately be the deciding factor in how secure and trustworthy the VPN they are using really is. In my opinion, there's a reason why VPN services like NordVPN, TunnelBear, Surfshark, and many other YouTube sponsor favourites are as mainstream as they are. Because of, well, good marketing first and foremost, but also because of the multitude of servers they offer in many different countries around the world, which afford their users with some of the best speeds possible. The levels of popularity enjoyed by these almost household names won't go unnoticed by the Glowboys. And this isn't even a hypothetical scenario. Popular VPN companies often state that they operate by a, quote, "we don't log your activity" ethos, but this claim has been refuted quite a few times in the past, which has ultimately culminated with NordVPN, one of the largest and most well-known VPN service providers that I bet you've probably heard of and watched an advert every now and then, stating that whilst they, quote, "don't log your activity, they will log your activity if requested by law enforcement. In other words, you can trust us, just not that much, and depending on who you are, we will actively betray your trust." This is common amongst most of the popular VPN services that I have mentioned, with the notable exception of ProtonVPN, which ironically is also the only one I have mentioned to have a free plan available for users with a Proton account, which is free to create. This is under the ProtonVPN /support/NoLogsVPN link if you want to have a look at yourself. But they say, in order to respect our users' privacy, ProtonVPN enforces a strict no-logs policy. This means we keep no session usage logs of what you do online, and we do not log metadata that can compromise your privacy. We don't log which websites you visit, we don't log your traffic, we don't log your IP, and so on and so forth. Now, we are trusting their word to an extent, as you can, if you read on a bit down here, it does talk about how they have verified by external independent experts. They do link to the no logs audit that they have here, that they have to do every now and then. I'm not too sure what the intervals are for it, but July 2024, so that's quite recent to when I'm uploading this video. As much as I think ProtonVPN is the better VPN when compared to the other market leaders such as NordVPN or ExpressVPN or TunnelBear or whatever it might be, out of all of them, I think ProtonVPN is the best. You are still trusting that they're doing the right thing, and they might think themselves that they're doing the best that they can. They might not even know about a little USB stick sticking out of one of their server racks in US server New York, because while the company itself may be to a certain extent outside of the jurisdiction of these Western nations like the United States that would want to put pressure on these VPN companies to allow different federal agencies to have access to certain information, the servers that ProtonVPN run, some of them are going to be based in the US, of course, for the US-based users that want to use Proton VPN, they need to have a server that's local to them. And what's stopping the feds from gaining access to that under the guise of something else? An example of the feds not being, exactly truthful would be when the FBI requested that Apple provide them with a backdoor to their iPhone, and then when Apple refused, the FBI came out later on and said that they had already done it anyway. Whilst we are taking them on their word, it does seem that Proton has a far better reputation when it comes to truly respecting their users' privacy than that of the more mainstream and well-known companies. Now, you might be wondering, but Mr. Blue Mohawk Man, you've only given me one example of a proper and currently trustworthy VPN. Yes, but only because the selection of a truly privacy-respecting VPN is quite difficult. You can guarantee that 90% of the VPNs you've seen on YouTube sponsors may as well be stamped and approved certified honeypots. Aside from creating your own VPN, which is a different can of worms I'm not going into during this video, are there any other choices open to us as average Joes? Yes, my child, yes, there is. A bit of background may be necessary, but bear with me as I detail my story. Whilst I was on a certain IRL escapade I embarked on a year or so ago, I found myself in the Scoff House, a cafeteria for those uninitiated. I was talking amongst a group of individuals, and myself and someone else got on the topic of Linux of all things. This moved on to the topic of online privacy and anonymity, the Tor network, etc. Now, as I later found out, this individual was, at the time, employed within a sensitive role within a certain government organisation, and when we were discussing the issue of privacy online, they stated they currently used Mullvad, both the browser and the VPN service that they provide. Now, I interpreted this as them endorsing a VPN service that they could trust, which is something that a person in their position would have been a pretty high bar for these companies to reach. But just taking a step back reveals that someone who is pretty high up in the echelon of a certain governmental organisation with access to some pretty cool and spooky stuff uses a VPN and browser service that is available to anyone because they believe it is secure enough and meets their threat level as someone who would be bound to face threat vectors all over the place at a much higher rate than the average citizen. This says a lot. There couldn't have been a better advertisement for Mullvad in my eyes, even if they wanted one. Now, of course, you, the viewer, are taking this story at face value, and are trusting me to be truthful about this. In the same vein, I'm also a firm believer in the notion of believing nothing online, nothing you hear, and only half of what you see. I am telling the truth, but I will leave that up to your discretion. There are other content creators and experts who would also vouch for the integrity of Mullvad, aside from my story, but Mullvad takes the cake in my eyes, and I hope you found the story interesting at least. So, with all of that said, it ultimately boils down to a simple question. When choosing a VPN, do you want to spend money? If no, go for Proton VPN. It's free and is the least likely, from my research, always do your own research kids, to be a honeypot. If you are willing to spend the equivalent of about 55 Swedish kroners, which is around $5.50 a month, go for Mullvad VPN. Side note, the Mullvad VPN service has some of the most comprehensive payment options I have ever seen for anything. Want to pay via bank transfer? Of course. Crypto? Sure. Monero? They've got you. Cash? Absolutely. Just post it in the mail. They accept nearly a dozen different currencies too. Well, there you have it. The best VPNs that probably aren't honeypots, those being Proton VPN and Mullvad VPN. Or you could make your own. That's up to you though. Like the video if you found it entertaining or useful, subscribe if you really enjoyed it, and comment what you think about Fed honeypots and VPN services. Does it really matter if all you're doing is watching Netflix and torrenting Linux ISOs? Pop your thoughts in the comments and let me know. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you stick around and check out some of my past videos. Don't go too far back though, the earlier ones are horrific. With that said, I'll see you in my next video.